The demand from the sky turned red at sunset, but it wasn't from the sun. Huge alien ships hovered above the Earth. They blocked satellites. They jammed signals. The whole world stopped to watch. Across every screen, one message repeated in perfect translation. This is the Defiance Empire. Earth, you will surrender. Resistance means destruction. The voice was cold, calm, and filled with power. People in cities stared up in silence. In villages and small towns, fear spread. Cars stopped in the streets. Planes landed without instructions. Every government leader received the same order. Surrender now or your planet will be destroyed. For the first time in a long time, the world was united in silence. The Defiants were not unknown. They ruled hundreds of systems. They had crushed powerful planets and made entire civilizations vanish. Their empire had been growing for centuries. Earth had always been considered too small, too wild, too backward to bother with. But now, something had changed. Earth had rare elements, rich oceans, and a growing power in the stars. The Defiants wanted it, and they wanted it without a fight. In a hidden underground room, Earth's leaders gathered. The United Nations building had been turned into a global war room. Men and women from every continent sat around the long table. Everyone looked at one screen, the countdown. The Defiants gave Earth 7 days to surrender. Only 7. One leader, an older man with deep scars on his face, stood up. If we bow now, our children will be slaves. If we fight, we might lose. But if we stand together, we have a chance. We are human. We don't break easily. The room fell silent. Then one by one every leader nodded. There would be no surrender. Across the globe, the message was sent to the Defiants. Earth rejects your demand. We will fight. The reply from the alien fleet was immediate. A city in the north was erased in a flash of light. Millions gone in a moment. But even then, Earth did not kneel. Instead, it roared. Missile silos were unlocked. Space defense platforms powered up. Secret weapons that had never seen daylight were moved into action. Giant human-made warships hidden for years rose from underground hangars and headed to space. The Defiants had power. But Earth had something else, a reason to fight. In one small town, a boy stood on his roof and looked up. His mother cried, quietly beside him, clutching a picture of her husband, a pilot now flying toward the stars. In a faraway bunker, a young engineer put the final piece into a giant drone. Her hands shook, but her eyes burned with purpose. In space, a human ship turned its weapons on the alien fleet. It was outnumbered 10-1, but it fired first. The galaxy watched. Many alien worlds expected Earth to fold, to give up like so, many before them. But humanity was different. It didn't fight because it was the strongest. It didn't fight because it was fearless. It fought because it refused to be owned. As the stars above lit up with the sparks of war, one message echoed through Earth's systems. They came for our surrender. We'll give them war instead. Uniting. The planet. The first shot had been fired. Earth had made its choice. The Defiants thought that one destroyed city would be enough to break human spirit. They were wrong. The loss hurt deeply, but it didn't bring fear. It brought rage. Within hours, every border on Earth became meaningless. Nations that had once been enemies were now allies. Flags were lowered, and a single banner was raised, the symbol of Earth. Factories that once made cars now produced missiles. Subways turned into underground command centers. Engineers, programmers, doctors, and even artists joined the war effort. Everyone had a role. Earth had 7 days to prepare, and every second counted. In a large spaceport near the equator, workers rushed to load warships. Ships with names like Freedom's Blade, Starfire, and The Last Hope were fueled and armed. Satellites buzzed in low orbit, sending constant updates from the alien fleet above. The Defiants watched all of this with amusement. To them, humans were still primitives, loud, emotional, and unorganized. The Empire had faced mighty civilizations, with fleets far larger than Earth's, and crushed them easily. What chance did this one small planet have? But the Drevians didn't understand what made humans dangerous. It wasn't their ships or weapons or numbers. It was their refusal to quit. In the hidden research base beneath Antarctica, scientists worked on ancient Earth tech projects, abandoned due to lack of funds or fear of risk. Now those limits were gone. They activated deep space cannons, stealth fields, and experimental drones. What was once impossible was now necessary. Elsewhere, old veterans were called back to duty. Gray-haired soldiers who once fought on distant battlefields picked up their uniforms again. One man who had lost a leg in an old war told his grandson, "They think we're soft. Let's prove them wrong." Young people joined too. Some had never held a weapon before, but they were fast learners. Pilots were trained in virtual simulators. Cyber warriors guarded Earth's networks from alien hacks. Even schoolchildren collected metal scraps to be melted down for armor plating. Across every screen, a simple message ran on a loop. No surrender. No retreat. Earth stands united. As the alien deadline approached, something remarkable happened. Other species began to notice. Small alien traders, exiles, and wanderers who had once visited Earth sent quiet signals back to their homeworlds. They're not like the others. These humans, they're preparing for a real fight. One species, an old race known for staying silent, broadcast a simple message to the galaxy. We may be witnessing the rise of something new. Back in Earth's orbit, the Drevian fleet prepared its next strike. Their commander, a tall creature with golden armor, sneered at the human activity. They resist out of pride. They will break soon. But even he was starting to feel a strange pressure. No world had responded to a Drevian threat like this before. No world had ever come together so fast. There was something in the human spirit that didn't make sense to him. It wasn't logic. It was something deeper. In a dark war room, beneath the oceans, Earth's commanders finalized their counterattack plan. They knew they couldn't win by waiting, so they would strike first. The goal wasn't just survival. It was to show the Drevians that Earth would never kneel. As the seventh day drew closer, all across the planet, people looked to the sky, not with fear, but with fire in their eyes. The countdown was almost over, and Earth was ready. First contact, first battle. The seventh day arrived. At dawn, the Drevians moved. A swarm of dark, needle-shaped ships broke from the main fleet and entered Earth's lower orbit. Their target, Earth's capital cities. Their goal, force surrender by fear. But Earth was no longer waiting. As the alien ships moved in, the sky lit up. From hidden bases, human defense platforms rose into position. Missile silos opened like flowers, and hundreds of Earth's first-generation orbital cannons locked on their targets. The first human shot came from Sky Lance 1, a massive railgun, stationed above the Atlantic. The blast tore through the lead Drevian ship, slicing it in half before it even had time to react. The battle had begun. All across the planet, people watched live feeds from orbit. Ships danced in space, flashing with blue and red bursts. Human fighters, smaller but faster, zipped between the heavy Drevian vessels like hornets. At first, it looked like suicide. Earth's ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were faster, smarter, and driven by desperation. Human pilots flew with purpose. They didn't fight to win medals. They fought for their homes, their families, their survival. Captain Mira, leading the Starfire squadron, gave the order, "Cut through their center. Don't let them regroup." Her team followed without hesitation. They dove between enemy ships, launched EMP missiles, and caused confusion among the Drevian ranks. The aliens responded with force. Lasers swept across space, striking several human vessels. A destroyer named Falcon's Wing exploded in a ball of fire. Dozens were lost, but for every loss, the humans struck back harder. In low orbit, Earth's new stealth drones activated. Invisible to most scanners, they slipped behind the Drevian lines and planted explosive mines. When they detonated, 3 Drevian cruisers were instantly disabled. On the surface, people held their breath. Children clutched their parents, soldiers, and civilians alike watched the sky, where flashes of light told the story of every hit, every loss, every victory. Then came the turning point. A group of human ships, 5 in total, broke formation and flew directly toward a massive alien carrier. This carrier, shaped like a black claw, had been leading the attack. It held hundreds of enemy troops and launch pods. The human team had one goal: take it down. The lead pilot, Commander Raffi, flew at full speed, dodging lasers and debris. He knew it was a one-way mission, but he didn't hesitate. "I'll see you on the other side," he whispered, and hit the carrier dead center. The explosion lit the sky like a second sun. The Deviant carrier broke apart, sending shockwaves through their fleet. Human ships cheered across all channels. That single act changed everything. The Deviant commander, watching from the mothership, slammed his clawed hand against the wall. They fight like mad beasts. They have no sense of order. But deep inside, he felt something else. Fear. Earth had taken its first real blow, and not only survived, but struck back harder. The alien fleet began to pull back, confused and scattered. On Earth, people poured into the streets, cheering. The first battle had ended, not in surrender, not in silence, but in fire and in hope. In the ruins of an abandoned city, a little girl looked to the sky and whispered, "We're still here," and, far above in the blackness of space, Earth's flag floated from the antenna of a battered human ship, defiant and proud. The war was far from over, but humanity had just proven something to the galaxy. They would not break. The human spirit, unleashed. The first major battle was over, but the war was only beginning. Earth had survived the Deviant assault. Against all odds, humanity had destroyed a key alien carrier and pushed back a fleet considered unbeatable. But the cost had been high. Cities were damaged, ships lost, and thousands had died. Still, the victory sparked something powerful. It awakened the human spirit. Across the planet, grief turned into purpose. Every hand, every mind, and every heart was now part of the fight. People didn't just mourn, they built. Factories ran day and night. Young engineers, many fresh out of school, worked side by side with veterans to improve drone tech, energy shields, and hull armor. In deep mountain labs, scientists tested energy weapons once deemed too dangerous. Now, danger was everywhere. Risk wasn't a question anymore. It was a necessity. And yet, despite the stress and fear, Earth didn't fall apart. It came together even tighter. A message began to spread across the networks, spoken in different languages, but with one meaning: we are not fighting to win a war. We are fighting so we can live free. In the deserts of the South, a secret project named Iron Fang came online. It was Earth's first spaceborne stealth bomber. It had no windows, no crew. It was controlled by a pilot far underground using a neural interface. The pilot, a quiet man named Leo, had never been in space, but his mind was sharper than any computer. When asked if he was ready, he simply said, "Just point me at the enemy." Meanwhile, in orbit, Earth's new warfleet was taking shape. Repaired cruisers, new destroyers, and experimental fighters launched one by one. Some of the ships had pieces from old satellites. Others were made from the ruins of cities that had been bombed. Everything became a weapon, but it wasn't just the military. Ordinary people became heroes in their own way. A group of farmers turned their land into landing strips for defense drones. Mechanics who once repaired cars now serviced space shuttles. Kids organized metal drives, bringing scrap to mobile forges that turned them into bullet casings. Art also became a weapon, not of war, but of hope. Songs, murals, and stories about the brave pilots and defenders filled the airwaves. Earth's morale didn't drop. It rose. The Deviants noticed. From their main ship, the alien commanders watched and discussed. "They do not act like other species," one said. "They fight as if every one of them is a soldier," another replied. "They are unpredictable," added a third. "And unpredictable is dangerous." The alien empire started reinforcing its fleet. A new wave of ships approached Earth, this time with stronger shields and heavier firepower. They were preparing for a final blow, but Earth had no plans to wait. Bold new operation was planned. One that would take the war into space and straight into Drevian territory. Not just defense, a counterattack. The mission would be led by a young space commander named Lena. She wasn't famous. She hadn't won any medals. But she understood the enemy. And more importantly, she believed in her crew. Her flagship, Vanguard, would lead a group of fast attack ships into a Drevian staging area near Jupiter's orbit. If they succeeded, they would cripple the aliens' next invasion wave before it could reach Earth. The plan was risky. The crew was nervous. But Lena simply said, "If they want a war, let's show them how humans fight." As her ships lifted, off and disappeared into the dark, people across the world watched in silence and pride. Earth was no longer defending itself. It was pushing forward. It was not the largest planet. It did not have the strongest fleet, but it had something no enemy could match, a united soul, burning with purpose. The human spirit had been unleashed, and the galaxy was about to feel its fire. The turning point. The Vanguard fleet cut through, space like a spear. Commander Lena stood on the bridge, watching the stars blur past. Her hands were calm, but her eyes were sharp. Behind her, dozens of ships followed, fighters, bombers, and cruisers, all modified with the latest tech Earth could build. Their target, a key Drevian staging area in Jupiter's orbit. If they succeeded, it would delay the next full-scale Drevian attack. If they failed, Earth would be left wide open. Lena's voice echoed across the comms. "Remember why we're out here. For the ones we lost. For the ones still fighting. Let's make this count." Meanwhile, back on Earth, all eyes were on the mission. Live signals tracked the fleet's path. People in bunkers, homes, and shelters whispered quiet prayers. The skies above were clear, but every soul below felt the weight of what was happening. Though, Drevians were ready. Their staging base near Jupiter was protected by a ring of defense satellites and 3 war cruisers. The moment the human ships were detected, alarms blared across the enemy network. But Lena wasn't planning on a quiet entrance. The human fleet came in fast, too fast for most systems to lock on. Earth's new stealth bombers launched first, cutting through the outer ring and disabling the satellites. Then came the fighters, spraying EMP charges and smoke screens. Inside the chaos, the Vanguard and her twin ship, Rising Dawn, moved in. A brutal battle followed. Lasers and plasma filled the black sky. One human fighter was hit and exploded instantly. Another spun out of control, its pilot ejecting just in time. The Drevian cruisers fired massive ion cannons, striking the Iron Fang bomber and crippling its core systems. But Earth fought back with fury. Lena gave the order. All ships concentrate fire on the enemy flagship. The Rising Dawn, though, heavily damaged, rammed one of the Drevian warships, opening a hole in its side. Human drones swarmed in, planting charges and disabling its engines. The explosion that followed was so bright, it lit up space for miles. From her command deck, Lena saw the enemy formation collapse, but she also saw her own fleet in pieces. Of the original 27 ships, only 10 were still moving. She opened a channel. "We're not done yet." The final blow came from an experimental railgun mounted on the Vanguard. Powered by Earth's newest energy core, it fired a dense metal round at near light speed. The projectile tore through the Drevian base's command tower. Seconds later, the entire structure imploded. The human fleet had done it. The staging base was gone. The few remaining Drevian ships scattered, fleeing back toward deep space. The mission was a success, but not without a cost. Back on Earth, when confirmation came through, the silence broke into cheers. People poured into the streets, hugging strangers, crying tears of relief. But something more important than victory happened that day. The galaxy noticed. Alien species who had once stayed silent began speaking up. On distant planets under Drevian, rule uprisings sparked. Rebels played recordings of Earth's battles, using them to inspire others. One message spread across the stars like wildfire. Humanity fights. Humanity survives. Humanity wins. The Defiants were shaken. Their commanders met in private. One of them spoke what they all feared. They're not just defending their world. They're building something greater. If we don't stop them now, we may never stop them. But it was already too late. The tide had turned, and Earth, once seen as weak and isolated, was now leading a movement of resistance. Earth's last stand. The victory at Jupiter's orbit changed everything. The Defiant fleet had suffered a blow it hadn't expected and couldn't ignore. For the first time in centuries, they were forced to retreat. But the Defiants were not finished. Not yet. Their empire responded with fury. Within days, the largest invasion fleet ever seen gathered beyond Earth's solar system. Thousands of warships armed with planet-cracking weapons moved into position. The Defiant commanders had made a final decision: destroy Earth completely. No more demands. No more warnings, just annihilation. Back on Earth, sensors detected the incoming wave. Panic threatened to spread, but Earth's leaders didn't allow it. Instead, they gave one command: prepare everything. This is our stand. Factories switched to emergency production. Every remaining resource was poured into weapons, shields, and launch platforms. Ships damaged in earlier battles were quickly repaired. Old systems were brought online, even if they weren't fully tested. In orbit, Earth's final defense plan took shape: Operation Sci-Fi. At its center was a secret weapon, a massive orbital cannon buried inside a hollowed-out asteroid. It had never been used, never even tested, but now it would be Earth's only hope of stopping the enemy flagship. The cannon was powered by Earth's most unstable energy source, capable of burning a hole through a moon, or failing and exploding before it even fired. There were no second chances. On the ground, millions gathered in shelters. Families held hands. Soldiers took their positions. Pilots suited up one last time. They all knew what was coming. Above, Earth's war fleet, what remained of it, formed a defensive wall. And then, they came. The Defiant fleet arrived like a dark sea, blotting out the stars. The sky turned black with metal. Their weapons charged. Earth's sensors screamed. The final battle had begun. The human ships launched first. Squadrons of fighters dived toward the invaders, weaving through fire like sparks. Explosions lit up the sky. Earth's railguns opened fire, striking the enemy's front lines. But it was not enough. The Defiants pressed forward. They unleashed their heavy cannons. Several human ships were destroyed in seconds. Earth's defense satellites were wiped out one by one. The shield grids began to fail. Then the Vanguard, still heavily damaged from the Jupiter mission, made a desperate charge toward the enemy command cruiser. Commander Lena's voice rang out over open comms. "We don't run. Not now. Not ever." Her ship rammed straight into the enemy's bridge, causing a chain reaction explosion. One of the Defiant flagships was down, but the main mothership still remained, and it was preparing to fire its core weapon at Earth. This was what Sci-Fi had been built for. In a hidden command chamber, 3 human engineers raced to charge the cannon. Warnings flashed across every panel. Core overload approaching. Stabilization failure imminent. They had no time. "Fire it now," the lead engineer yelled. The asteroid cannon powered up. Energy built inside its core until the rock itself glowed white-hot. The Defiant mothership turned to face it. They tried to jam it, disrupt it, but Earth's cyber teams blocked every attack, and then it fired. A beam of blue light, brighter than the sun, blasted through the void. It struck the Defiant mothership midsection, cutting it in half. The core of the alien ship went critical and exploded. The shockwave pushed ships in all directions. The sky was filled with debris and fire, but it was done. The enemy fleet, leaderless, and in chaos, scattered. Some tried to regroup, others simply fled. Humanity had survived. People across the world looked up in disbelief. They had prepared for death. What they found instead was victory. In bunkers, people cried and cheered. On ships, pilots hugged one another. All across Earth, there was silence. Then joy. Real, raw joy. Earth had made its last stand. And it had stood strong. The galaxy watches. The fires in orbit still burned, but the battle was over. Wreckage from both fleets drifted above Earth like broken stars. The air was filled with static and silence. From the surface, people looked up at the sky that had once been covered in death and now shone with peace. Earth had won. The Drevian Empire's greatest fleet was gone. Their command shattered, their pride humbled. The remaining Drevian ships fled into deep space, silent and wounded. They left behind no messages, no warnings, just wreckage and silence. But Earth's message was clear. We are still here, and we will never kneel. Across the galaxy, species that had once hidden under Drevian rule began to rise. On distant planets, slaves revolted. Rebels wore Earth's colors on their arms. The humans had done something no one else had dared. They had stood, they had fought, and they had won. On the trade world of Mirren, merchants gathered around screens playing Earth's final battle. One whispered, "They should have broken." Another answered, "They should have bowed." But they didn't. News reports raced through the stars. Earth repels Drevian invasion. The Deathworlders rise. Humanity survives the impossible. A meeting of free systems was called. For the first time in history, Earth was given a seat at the galactic table, not as a beggar or a newcomer, but as a power. Not because of how many ships it had, or how many systems it ruled, but because it had proven what truly mattered: will. Back on Earth, rebuilding began. Craters were filled. Cities were rebuilt. Families mourned the fallen, honored the heroes, and looked forward. Statues were raised, not of commanders or leaders, but of the nameless ones who had fought and died for the right to be free. Children in classrooms studied the war, not as a tragedy, but as a turning point. Songs were written, stories were passed down, and at the edge of space a new fleet was being built, not for war, but for peace through strength. Earth would never be caught off guard again. The stars were no longer unreachable. Humanity was no longer alone. A new banner was flown at every spaceport, every outpost, every ship, a simple starburst with the words, "We decide our fate." As Earth's newest explorer ship launched on its first peaceful mission, its captain looked back at the blue world growing smaller behind him. "Let them watch," he said. "Let the galaxy remember." The age of fear was over. The age of humanity had begun.